This is Barb the Brain. Barb likes to body build. When I teach internal medicine residents, I like to keep Barb around. That's because Barb loves cognitive load theory, and she turns my instructional design from nope to dope in no time. Cognitive load theory is also referred to by its affectionate acronym CLT. It started out as an educational psychology construct and ultimately became known as an adult learning theory. The book chapter upon which this video is based summarizes CLT with this sexy turn of phrase. Cognitive load theory examines how the intersection of human cognitive architecture and instructional design affect human learning. So what's the main cognitive psychology principle that informs CLT? Well, we have nearly infinite long-term memory, but decidedly finite short-term memory. This makes our short-term memory the limiting factor, and it has critical implications on both teaching and learning. If we overload our short-term memory during a given learning session, then we compromise the chance of committing any given concept to our long-term memory. Invoking the word load lends itself quite nicely to a weightlifting analogy. Here is Barb again. She likes to clean and press. She fancies herself quite dope when she lifts this heavy barbell from the ground up into her shoulders and then presses it smoothly over her head. In this analogy, the act of lifting the barbell, that is, the exercise itself, represents her short-term memory. After all, both her strength and her short-term memory are finite. The cognitive load that she experiences is the weight of the barbell, and the completion of the movement, that is, successfully getting the barbell to be above her head, that represents storing something successfully into her long-term memory. In traditional cognitive load theory, there are three factors that contribute to the total cognitive load, that is, the total weight of the dumbbell. They are 1. Extraneous load, 2. Intrinsic load, and 3. Germane load. Let's explore them now. Extraneous load refers to suboptimal instructional design that unnecessarily distracts the learner. 3 examples are excessive detail, redundancy, and unwelcome stimuli. Let's imagine I'm going to teach the differential diagnosis to abdominal pain. Extraneous load from excessive detail would be if I wax poetic about the underlying pathophysiology that informs the molecular mechanism of the creation of gallstones. Extraneous load from redundancy would be if I present a PowerPoint slide on the differences between small bowel obstruction and large bowel obstruction, and on that slide I decide to type in exquisite detail every single word that I intend to narrate out loud while I simultaneously show that slide. Moving outside the classroom and into the chaotic world of clinical medicine, the most famous celebrity of extraneous load from unwelcome stimuli would be the pager and her barrage of bloops, bloops, and vibrations. Revisiting our analogy, we represent extraneous load with red plates. The key concept is that these red plates contribute to the total weight of the barbell. Mind you, they're not the desired item that Barb wants to lift above her head to store into her long-term memory. She actually prefers green plates. More on that in a bit. Intrinsic load refers to the idea that whatever is being taught, regardless of how it's being taught, inherently requires some discrete level of processing power by our short-term memory. Keep in mind, however, that not all skills and concepts are created equal. The 2 considerations that influence the amount of intrinsic load are 1. The prior knowledge of the learner, and 2. Element interactivity. Element interactivity is defined as the total number of things that are processed in concert by our working memory for a given learning task. If, for instance, the learning task is to memorize a bunch of names of the intraperitoneal solid organs, then the element interactivity is low. If, however, the learning task is to master an approach to the differential diagnosis of abdominal pain, then intrinsic load will be much higher because element interactivity is robust. Nuanced considerations include things like assigning rank priority to cannot miss diagnosis. For example, think ectopic pregnancy. Or considering base rates of specific pathologies for individual intraperitoneal organs. Think cholecystitis is way more common than acute splenic infarct. Returning once again to our analogy, the intrinsic load is represented by the barbell itself. All learning endeavors will have some amount of intrinsic load that is inherent to the task and therefore immutable. Barb will always need a barbell to lift the weights, regardless if the plates that are on that barbell change in their size, number, or color. Germane load is the least intuitive, but perhaps it's best understood in relation to extraneous load. If extraneous load is bad, remember the red plates, then we can think of germane load as good. More specifically, germane load is the processing power that's dedicated to schema acquisition and automation. If I teach the differential diagnosis to abdominal pain, then germane load would be focusing my learner's attention on organizing that information with a dedicated schema. One approach could be anatomic compartments, for example, below the belt, above the diaphragm, and intraperitoneal organs. Another strategy could be to lead with 3 cannot miss diagnoses. For example, vascular catastrophes, luminal obstructions, or frank perforations. Returning one last time to Barb, germane load is represented by the green plates. These plates, just like the red plates and the barbell itself, contribute to the total weight of the dumbbell. But ultimately, the green plates are ascribed the most value. Therefore, as educators, when we are designing our instructional plans, we really want to prioritize germane load. That's because schema can help us automate certain skills and concepts to then free up more processing power to move on to higher order tasks. So here's the recap. Cognitive load theory examines how the intersection of human cognitive architecture and instructional design affects human learning. The additivity hypothesis states that all 3 of these factors contribute to the total cognitive load. Extraneous load is, quote, bad, unquote. It refers to suboptimal instructional design that unnecessarily distracts the learner. It can be reduced. Remember the red plates. Intrinsic load is a discrete level of processing power inherent to learning a given concept or skill. It cannot be changed. Remember the barbell itself. Germane load is, quote, good, unquote. It refers to processing power dedicated to schema acquisition and automation. It can be increased. Remember the green plates. If you learned something today, please smash the subscribe button. And remember, the dopest instructional design in the world is meaningless if you don't promote psychological safety for your trainees. You won't want to sleep on this video here. Here's Barb again. Here's Barb again. Here is Barb again.